Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, we've got a packed day for you. I know many of you have looked at the agenda, and we're starting with a topic that I know is heavy, but it's such an important one. There's so many times that we think there's things that Washington should not be doing. We're usually trying to stop bad things and from happening, getting the government involved. But there's kind of a new move in the country happening mostly at the state level to really push for infanticide. And so we need Washington to step up and say to the states, that's something you cannot do. No matter where you are, no matter what your state is, you must protect the innocent and those that are born alive. And so that's what we're going to talk about this morning, why it's important, what's happening in Washington, how you can be involved. But just to set the stage, and I'm sure some of you have seen these clips, I want to show you what has recently been said by the governors of New York and Virginia. Take a look at the screens.
Pass a state law that is a prophylactic from the federal action, and that means pass Roe Reproductive Health Act and the Contraceptive Care Act.
So how late in the third trimester would you be able to do that?
You know, it's very unfortunate that our physicians, witnesses were not able to attend today to speak specifically.
No, I'm talking about your bill. How late in the third trimester could a physician perform an abortion if he indicated it would impair the mental health of the woman?
Or physical health.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm talking about the mental health.
So, I mean, through the third trimester. The third trimester goes all the way up to 40 weeks.
Cathy Tran made her case for lifting restrictions on third trimester abortions as well as other restrictions now in place. And she was pressed by a Republican delegate about whether her bill would permit an abortion even as a woman is essentially dilating, ready to give birth. And she answered that it would permit an abortion at that stage of labor.
If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mothers.
Well, those are pretty chilling words, to say the least, as you hear Governor Northam there talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm joined by a panel of women who have all been leaders and fighters on this issue. First, Gianna Jessen. Gianna, thank you so much for being here. She's a pro-life advocate, and you're going to hear her story, because when you hear people say, this doesn't happen, it happened to Gianna, and she's here and alive to talk about it. Congressman Cathy McMorris Rodgers from the other great Washington State. We're delighted to have you here, who's been a champion on so many issues, including for veterans, but certainly a leader on this issue. And Janae Stracke, who is with Heritage Action for America. She's our grassroots director. It's going to really fill us in on a lot of great things that Heritage Action is doing specifically on this issue. And one of the newest members of the Heritage family, Charmaine Yoest. Charmaine is the vice president of our Family, Community, and Opportunity Institute at Heritage, and is a longtime fighter for this issue in the movement. Used to be the president of Americans United for Life, among other great organizations. Congressman McMorris Rodgers, let me begin with you, because I wanted to set up the fact that so many people said, well, wait a minute, didn't President George W. Bush sign something called the Born Alive Act back in, I think it was 2006 maybe, or 2002. Why is this legislation needed now, and why didn't that stop what we see happening in places like Virginia and New York?
Right. Well, it's really unthinkable where we find ourselves today. But as you saw, this is a debate about whether there would be life-saving treatment made available to a baby who has survived an attempted abortion. And for most of us, it's unthinkable, and our goal is to make sure that it is unthinkable in America. This is the country where we cherish our basic rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And our entire healthcare system is one that is based upon saving lives. So the fact that we find ourselves in the midst of this debate right now, for most of us, is unthinkable. Yet today in the House of Representatives, we have attempted to bring the legislation forward that would ensure life-saving treatment would be offered to that baby who has survived an abortion. We brought it forward 30 times, and we've been denied in the House that vote. So Steve Scalise and Ann Wagner out of Missouri have filed the discharge petition because Speaker Nancy Pelosi is refusing to bring it forward for a vote, and we are collecting signatures right now. We will have to get 218 signatures in the House in order to bring this legislation forward. We have 3 Democrats to date. We need some more, and we're continuing to press it.
And I know there are, 89 women Democrats in the House, is that right? Have any of them come on board of this?
Unfortunately not. And we have 13 Republicans, women, all pro-life. 2018 was tough on our Republican women in the House. I believe that they were targeted by the Democrats, and we lost a number of dynamic women that had been serving in the House of Representatives, pro-life women. And this needs to be one of our causes moving forward. And on a total side note, I'm really encouraged by the women, pro-life women, that are stepping forward across the country in response to what we see on the left. And we've seen the marches. We've seen angry women wearing funny-looking hats. And you know what? They don't represent a lot of women in America. And so it is so important at this time that we are all stepping forward, but especially the voices of pro-life women, I think, are important in this debate.
Gianna, I want to ask you about your personal story, because I said there's so many times you hear people say this is unthinkable, it can't possibly be happening, but even we know, I mean, the CDC has put out numbers talking about how many babies do survive abortions every year, and it's not reported. This is something that's truly happens, and it happened to you. Would you tell us your story?
Yes, thank you for having me, and I feel so honored to be on this panel. And yes, I have cerebral palsy, and I was never supposed to walk. I was never supposed to get up out of a bed or hold up my head. But thank you, Jesus, I do. And my medical records state, and this is mind-blowing to read on your birthday, which is April the 6th, born during saline abortion, April the 6th, 1977, 6 a.m., 29 and a half weeks gestation, 2.5 pounds, no resuscitation required upon arrival at the hospital. Because I was not born in a hospital. I was born in an abortion clinic in Los Angeles. My biological mother, I'm adopted, and my biological mother was 17, 7.5 months pregnant, and had this saline abortion that burns a baby inside and out, blinds and suffocates the child. And then in my particular case, I was to be born dead within 24 hours. I recently spoke with a top neonatologist in Italy, Dr. Noia. He does extraordinary work, does surgery in utero on Down syndrome children, amazing work. And he came up to me and he said, "Gianna, you are a witness to life." And I thought, dude, you are as intense as I am. We're gonna get along. And he went on to say, Gianna, you have experienced the highest level of physical and emotional trauma that is possible. He said, in that time of gestation, the amygdala is formed, so all of our emotions. Our pain response is formed in the 28th week. This happened in the 29th and a half week. You only had that for a week and a half. I said, well, doc, all my enemies love to say, you're lying, because you don't have burns on your body. He said, I believe that the amniotic fluid was more powerful than the saline solution, and it protected you. He said, that is my medical opinion. However, both you and I know it was Jesus. It was Jesus. And so I am a Christian. I'm here to proclaim the gospel, and I don't die easy. And I have, as I said, cerebral palsy, but I've run 2 marathons, and I want to climb a mountain now.
And I don't think there's any doubt you're gonna do it. And one of the things, Gianna, that you've said, though, and again, coming back to why this legislation is important, is that one of the reasons, in addition, that you survived is because the abortionist had not shown up that day.
Yes. Thank you for reminding me about that. Yes. I mean, had he been there, he wasn't there. Thank you, Lord. Had he been there, he would have ended my life with strangulation, suffocation, or leaving me there to die. And he just didn't know who he was trying to kill.
Charmaine, you've been so involved in this issue for so many years, and you've seen both sides, the pro-life side and the pro-abortion side, how they've kind of changed over the years. How is it that we've gotten to where we are today? I mean, this is, and Janae, you also speak to this is not about abortion. This legislation would not ban Roe v. Wade. It would not overturn abortion in any state in the country. It's just saying if a child is born, we've got to then, if they're born alive, we've got to save them. How is it that the folks who've talked about making it safe, just making it legal, but making it rare, can literally be for infanticide? And every major group I know out there on the pro-abortion side is absolutely opposed to this legislation. How are they taking such an extreme stand?
I think that's a really great question, and it's something that I ask myself every time I see them talking, because it just seems like we live in this parallel universe of them not being connected to the same reality that we are. But in listening to Gianna talk about her story, I keep remembering this very vivid memory that I have from early in my career. The state of Virginia was considering a partial birth abortion law to ban killing the baby as it's being born. And I went down to Richmond to listen to the oral arguments in the case. And it made such a deep impression on me because there was the woman who was arguing against the passage of the bill, which just seems like such a common sense thing, that if a baby is in the process of being born, you shouldn't be able to kill them. That's just common sense. But so I'm listening very carefully to her argument. I believe she was from the ACLU, and what she said to the judge as he was pressing her on why do you oppose this common sense legislation? And she said, well, Judge, consider what happens if a doctor is working to perform an abortion and there's an accidental birth. An accidental birth. And I'm sorry, I'll try to say this without getting choked up, but an accidental birth is my beloved friend Gianna. And it's been fascinating to me as Gianna and I got to be friends many years ago, and she talked to me about the abuse that she has endured from the abortion community, to the point that they have been very proactive in trying to claim that her whole life is just a fraud, questioning her birth documents and things like that. So with that as a setting, to get to your question is why, the other thing that I've seen from the other side over the course of my career is this just resolute commitment to being sure that there is nothing that comes anywhere near the right to abortion. And I think the very simple answer is that once they have committed to ending the life of a baby, there's nothing beyond that horrifies them. And having said that very bald statement, I would go on and say that one other thing that we have to keep in mind is when I say they, I mean the activists who are working on the issue. As I was thinking about this panel this morning, I was kind of in my mind reviewing. I think we have to keep in mind that imagine a woman who has carried a baby all the way to term and gets to this point where she's in that abortionist's office, and they're all in that setting committed to the end of the life of that baby. There's something in her life that has gone drastically wrong.
Yes.
And I think that so many times in this debate, we lose sight of that, because as I've seen this debate play out, I'm really, really struck by just how unified the other side is on this issue. You know, Kathy, the people that you come across who are just opposing you so dramatically on the floor of the House and in every other venue, there is a difference between that kind of activism and the men and women who get caught up in it. And I think that's really critical for us, and I'll talk about this more later maybe, but that's a dynamic that we can't lose sight of, is that there is a very organized, there's an organized abortion lobby, and this is, for them, an issue. It's not the reality on the ground of the people who are caught up in it that they distort their real life experience.
Yes, I have seen when we would be in the middle of a debate on the floor, I've watched women on the other side of the aisle just plug their ears because they didn't want to hear it. And I am often called anti-woman because I'm pro-life, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Right? How is that possible? We celebrate every life.
Just like Kay was saying yesterday, she's a white nationalist.
But also, just to your point, I was thinking about this just the other day. They don't want the gospel of Jesus Christ, so isn't it almost the gospel to them? This is their gospel, and they fight for it with the vigilance of the gospel.
It is like a religion. I know you all watch this on TV, and if you've been in D.C., and maybe it's even happened in your local communities, when you see the marches, whether it's the Women March or many of the others, there is like religious fervor among the folks that are involved in these. Janae, let me ask you, Cathy talked earlier about what's happening, kind of where the legislation is on the Hill, talked about something called a discharge petition. Explain for everybody what that is, and also what Heritage Action is doing, because the Sentinels and the folks around the country who are involved with Heritage Action have really stepped up on this issue, and just recently we're in D.C. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the discharge petition is a strategy we're using to force a floor vote. So she referenced needing to get 218 signatures, and because Speaker Pelosi is not going to let this bill see the light of day, we need to force our hand. We have to be smart and strategic in what we do, legislatively, in the grassroots. And, Charmaine was talking about, this is not the general public. It is the abortion lobby. It is big abortion money that's pouring money into these campaigns. And you heard it in the video. They're terrified of what that means for their business, for their pocketbooks, for their political careers. That's why this is an issue. It's not the American people. Democrat, Republican, pro-life, pro-choice, almost 80% of Americans are against this. It's very easy and straightforward. So we have to do our part to fight against the abortion lobby and the big money that's being poured into this, and be strategic and be smart. How we're doing that is through the discharge petition. We want to force their hand. They need to answer this question. Do you support infanticide? Yes or no? That's the question they need to answer. If they don't want to, it's uncomfortable. Even again in the video, Delegate Cathy Tran, it's her bill, and she could hardly even answer the questions. It's uncomfortable. It's not a good thing. It's not a celebrated thing. So she also talked about the fly-in that we did. So we had a lobby day with our grassroots. We brought in almost 60 of our grassroots activists. And you guys, this event was planned in about 2 weeks. We didn't know when the discharge petition would go live. We don't have control of the House, so we have to be ready. And that's our activists across the country. Yes, the abortion side, it is a religion for them, but I'm telling you, our grassroots, they care about this issue. They